Hello again, friends, and welcome to another edition of the Haunting of KGGO. My name is B-sox. I'll be your host as we dive into the world of the paranormal and talk about the things that go bump in the night. Of course, the Haunting of KGGO is sponsored by the Phantom Fall Fest happening at Adventureland all this month. More details about it at adventurelandresort.com. Don't forget you can check out more about the haunting at kggo.com/haunting. So this week, the second week of the 5th season of the Haunting of KGGO takes us to Council Bluffs, Iowa. Today we're going to be joined by Kat Slaughter from the Squirrel Cage Jail. Kat joins me on the line right now. Kat, thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to get to talk about the Squirrel Cage.
All right, so to set this up real quick, I first learned about the Squirrel Cage Jail a few years ago. I was watching I don't know if it was a ghost show or a documentary or something, but they started talking about this jail it's a big cage, it rotates, it does all this really crazy stuff, and oh, by the way, it's haunted. Now, tell us a little bit about the Squirrel Cage and why this thing is so interesting.
So the Squirrel Cage Jail was built in 1885, and it served as the county jail up until 1969. But what makes it weird or interesting is that it's 3 layers of rotating cells. So almost think of a 3-layer carousel with bars around it. And there's only one opening per level, and that's completely controlled by the jailer. And you can have 60 inmates in the cage.
Oh, wow, 60?
Only one jailer on staff and his wife.
Oh, my God.
So 60 in total.
Okay, so I didn't know that they actually lived there. It's essentially a lighthouse for prisoners.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, so this place is over in Council Bluffs. It's no longer in service, correct?
No, but we are a museum, so we're open quite regularly to come see the cage.
All right, so the cage in general, I think if I remember one of the things I was reading, it's like a rotary jail, it's called?
Yes, it is a rotary jail. There were 18 of this style built in the country.
At what point did someone go, this is a really good idea? Like, it seems like a very overcomplicated way of doing something simple.
Oh, yes. Brown and Haw of Indianapolis, they came up with the idea, thinking kind of the panopticon, so keeping inmates from being around each other so they can think of why they're in there.
Okay.
And the rotation would make it more difficult for escapes. In theory, brilliant. In practice, it had a lot of issues. Bars would get stuck. Inmates could get injured, and if it gets stuck, any emergencies are going to be very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, they were saying in one of the videos, they said something about if there's a fire, it's done. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Kat Slaughter.
No, unfortunately, definitely it's dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. Kat Slaughter, the museum director for the Squirrel Cage Jail, on the line with me right now. So it is a historical landmark, if I remember right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and it is preserved. It is a museum that you can go, and it does have a haunted history. I want to get to that here in a few minutes. How did you get on at the Squirrel Cage Jail?
Well, I went to school for history and museum studies, and I was moving out into the area and looking at different places. And then I found the Squirrel Cage Jail, and I just had to see what it was. And I was able to start working there, which was just very exciting.
So it wasn't it was an opening and you went for it. It wasn't like you were trying to like track down this place type thing, right?
No, unfortunately, that would have been fun. It was just everything came together perfectly.
And when you got there, what were your initial thoughts of the place? Had you ever seen a building, a prison or a jail like this, or a building like this? Because if you look at it from the outside, you'd never know that there was a jail on the inside.
Yeah, well, I've toured a bunch of jails and prisons growing up. I've always been into history, so it's a hazard. I was just amazed by the structure and just how it worked. I think I'm still amazed by that every day.
And you were saying that the jailer and his wife would actually live in the place, right?
Yes. So no time off, really. You just go upstairs, but you're always on call or available to work.
Like, how big of a staff would that kind of place be? Like, yeah, you could do it with one person, but how many people were actually working there when it was in service?
Just the jailer and his wife overall.
No,
Towards
really?
the 50s? Yeah.
Wow. So
that's partially why this design was so exciting.
So who was cooking for the inmates and all that, or doing laundry, or what have you? All those little things that you usually need a staff for. Was it the jailer and his wife?
Yes. So the jailer's wife, the jail matron, she would do all of the cooking. She was cooking on a wood-burning stove for the majority of the time.
No, really?
Yeah, so making everything 2 meals a day at the beginning. Later on, they'd get 3, and she'd just be cooking pretty continuously. And also, in the first 20 years, she'd heat up coals in order to heat the structure because there was no heat during that time.
Oh, my gosh. Boy, so if you're going to go work at this place, it really was a you better be okay working here type thing, right?
Yeah, it's a grueling job for both the jailer and his wife.
Oh, my gosh. Kat Slaughter, the museum director of the Squirrel Cage Jail in Council Bluffs, joining me on the line right now. All right, so the Squirrel Cage Jail has some haunted history. Let's dive into that a little bit. And actually, you know what? When was the first moment you found out that it was haunted?
Probably not long after I started working there.
Like, did someone tell you that the place is haunted, or did you kind of find out about it? How did that work?
It was a mixture.
Okay.
So there was definitely some talk about it when I started, but maybe a week or 2 in, we were finishing up for the day. Myself and a tour guide, we were the only ones there. And a music box from the top floor started playing. And that's where it was pretty concrete. Something weird was happening. It was an 1800s music box that needs to be wound, and nobody touches that.
Weird. So, like, did it play, like, continuously? Was it, like, just a short little burst? Because, like, if it was a short little burst, you could think, okay, maybe it just had some tension on a spring or something and went. But was it really, like, just playing?
It was just playing. It was long enough that we were able to question whether or not we were hearing it and then definitively know that's the music box.
Now, did anybody go up and check it out? Or were you like, you know what, it's just time to leave. Let's just head home.
We still had to close down the building, so we went up there together.
Oh, wow. All right, so I got to ask, what was kind of the subtle hint that the place may be, like something else may be going on at it?
We have some displays about different investigators that have been through, as well as some pictures that investigators have caught.
Okay.
So that definitely sticks out. And then when I worked there alone, I've heard whistling, doors closing, footsteps, things like that you shouldn't hear in a building that has the front door locked.
And it's a jail, so I can't imagine it's easy to get in and out of the place. Like, it's not like a house where you just, throw open a window or, the back door's unlocked, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's very secure.
Okay, all right. Kat Slaughter from the Squirrel Cage Jail on the line with me right now, talking about it's a fascinating building. I'll put some of the videos up and pictures of the place at the bottom of the website at kggo.com. But let's talk a little bit more about the haunting stuff. So that was your first experience. What was the experience that really made you go, oh my gosh, what is going on here?
I'm not sure. I think maybe it's all of them together.
Okay. Like, is it
small enough at times?
Okay. Is it, well, you talk about, some of the places, I've heard about, doing this show, it's, it's like Edinburgh or Villisca or Farrar or what have you, and some of the events are very big. Are they big events at Squirrel Cage? Is it malevolent? Is it, what kind of haunting are we talking about?
Sometimes they can be large, but we believe a jailer is still on staff. So I think personally that's why we don't have anything too crazy going on. But you will see somebody checking in on you if you're working in the office, footsteps going up the stairs. I think a group the other night was hearing voices from the 4th floor maybe. That's pretty common. Or if you're working on the 1st floor, you're going to hear things above you. If you're working on the top floor, you'll hear things below you. Okay,
so it's always kind of next room type stuff, it sounds like.
Yeah, kind of cat and mouse. You know somebody's around, but you can't always pin it down.
Okay, go back real quick to the, you said it seems like they look in on you while you're working?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. Like, is it like a head peeking in? Is it, what's going on?
So if you're working at the desk, there's the doorway into the room, and it feels like out of the corner of your eye, you just get a glimpse of somebody looking in. So whenever you go to look directly at it, you won't really see anything.
Okay.
But you just get, that feeling that somebody's watching you. And you'll catch somebody just out of that corner of your eye.
So we think it's a jailer, though. Any idea who?
Yeah.
Okay.
We think it might be Bill Foster, but we're not sure. We've gotten quite a few names. Bill Foster, he was one of our second to last jailers. He also believes the building to be haunted.
Okay. Now, Bill Foster, so you actually got Bill Foster was somebody on staff, and, through paranormal means, you got the name Bill Foster or Bill.
Yes.
Really? That's kind of weird. Is there any reason why Bill would still be there, or?
He spent a lot of time working there, and then he did believe it was haunted as well, so we wonder if maybe that's part of the connection.
Well, you got to wonder. I mean, there's some, ideas of some crazy connections between, what's, going on, like real world, what's happening somewhere versus, what may be going on the other side of it. You got to wonder is it just people, ghosts or whatever you want to call them, spirits, still locked up in the place?
We definitely wonder about that. We think we have 7 to 9 different things.
Really?
They're just kind of always there, some residual and likely some intelligent. We've had really good luck with asking questions and getting proper answers, not just asking a question and a random word coming back.
Now, I know as a museum director, you've had to be, you have to, and we were talking off the air that, October is kind of a mess for you because everybody wants to go see it. But how many of these investigations have you been on, if any, or is it just stuff that you've noticed while being in the building?
I've been there for 6 years.
Okay.
So I do not know how many investigations I've been on at this point.
Okay, so you actually do go on the you actually do go on the
not all of them.
Okay. What was the moment that maybe in 6 years see some of these groups come through? What's one of the, and when I say better, maybe one of the moments that was the most like unbelievable?
Maybe the flashlight method. That one just always shocks me, I guess. So you'll put a flashlight on a table and watching it turn on and off when you ask questions, and it's not just shorting out and twitching at the light.
Yeah.
But you'll ask a question and it'll turn on when you ask that, and you'll be 4 or 5 feet away is the closest somebody will be, and you just see that happening.
Okay. What's probably the best piece of evidence anybody's pulled out, whether it's video or a picture or, sound, EVP wise? What's some of the best evidence anybody's pulled out of this squirrel cage?
A few people have gotten shadow figures on camera.
Okay.
And those are very interesting. It looks like the same figure. And then EVPs are pretty popular in our building. One that really sticks out to me was a few years ago, we worked with a team Paranormania doing an event. We had everybody on the first floor in the cell block. We were just recording, and somebody felt like they'd been touched. And then on the recording, you hear, "I'm down here too." And it was absolutely distinct.
Oh, weird. Is it the place that gives you the heebie-jeebies?
Sometimes the second floor can unnerve me a little bit, but
why the
there's
second
enough
floor?
time there. I think just juvenile detention makes me a little uncomfortable. It could be a mixture of being sad.
Juvenile detention?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that it essentially had a juvie level.
Yeah, we have men, women, and kids, so we could potentially hold anywhere from 3 to 13-year-olds in that juvie section. We know from a fingerprint card that a 12-year-old boy was housed in there in the 1920s before being sent to a reform school.
Really? What was he in for?
Shooting chickens.
And they put him in the squirrel cage?
They did.
Wow, they weren't messing around back then.
Serious stuff.
Okay, so...
No, we had one guy in for fishing without a license for 5 nights.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, you don't hear about that stuff very often. I hope he's not the guy that's haunting it, or he's really holding a grudge. But Kat Slaughter on the line with me right now. So the second floor was a juvie level, and that's where you get the creepy feeling. What is there a reason why, or what's happened to you while you've been on that second floor that's led to this?
We've heard footsteps from that level, at least I have. I know some people have heard voices. They've heard a little girl kind of walking around or singing in that area. I don't know if there's any one reason.
Okay.
Hair on the back of my neck stands up a little bit in the juvie section.
Okay, that's just the one that does it for you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Boy, I did not know they had the juvenile section on that. That's crazy to me. Did any of the jailers or the staff ever have kids in the place?
Yes, they would raise their children on the living quarters there.
Oh, can you imagine?
It'd be a huge job. You're taking care of all the inmates, and you still have to raise your kids.
Oh my gosh! So the real quick, just because I don't know, the living quarters. What was that like? Was it like a 2-bedroom apartment? How much space are we talking about?
Oh, so it's a 4th floor apartment, and it's directly over the cell block.
Okay, but that's quiet.
Yeah, it'd be great. It echoes straight up. There's actually a maintenance shaft that goes straight through the apartment from the main cage.
Okay.
And then there's a bedroom, a bathroom, and a living room up there with some side storage rooms that could be used as additional kids' bedrooms if needed, or just storage, whatever they needed. It's a pretty good size, but again, you are living directly on top of the inmates.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a great time. So what was the longest tenure anybody had as the jailer?
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that. We're working on getting some better numbers still.
Okay.
Since we closed a relatively short period of time ago, we're still learning.
Okay. Is there an idea, maybe you've seen people, they lasted a year or two there or whatever. What's kind of the general thought?
3 to 6 years.
Okay.
I think the longest is going to be closer to 8 to 10.
Kat, let me ask you this. Before you started working here, did you believe in the paranormal? Was it interesting to you? Did you just think it was a whole lot of nonsense? Where were you when you came in to the Squirrel Cage?
I definitely believed in the paranormal. I watched all the shows growing up, but I hadn't really had any experiences. And so I think once I started working there, it became a definitive, the paranormal, that's a thing.
Okay.
Not just that fun TV show I watch.
That's not happening to me. Has there
Exactly.
been any, you said you've been there about 6 years, I think you said?
Yeah.
Is there anything that, does anything follow you around? Does anything weird happen at home, like you feel like something may have followed you? Anything like that?
No, happily, everything stays at work. They definitely follow me around there.
Okay.
But they stay there.
Do you, when you get there, does it, feel like it's just a crowded room or what?
Not for me. Most of the time I find out they're following me because of the investigators.
Okay.
We had a group in this past weekend. They were doing just an EVP session, doing some questions, and apparently they got, we're watching you, and they asked where, and they were in the office. And that's where I usually am during investigations.
Does that creep you out?
Sometimes. I'm getting more used to it, I suppose.
How long did it take to get a little used to it, or was it as bad? Because I imagine at the beginning you're just like, okay, they're watching me. Okay. All right, let's just...
Probably the first couple of years.
Okay.
And that's, okay, that's the weird coworker.
That's awesome. I'm trying to think. I mean, so you did believe in this a little bit before you went in, hadn't had any experiences. What's been the most powerful one for you? Whether it's good, bad, indifferent, what's the one that really stands out to you?
It probably seems like a small one, but it was footsteps going up our front stairs because I was just working in the office with my back to the stairs.
Okay.
And they're metal, so it's very easy to hear when somebody walks on them.
Okay.
And I went upstairs to see if anybody was up there. In the end, that level was just completely empty. And that just really sticks with me.
How long have they been letting ghost groups into the building?
I believe a little over 10 years.
Okay. What was the change? At what point did they go, you know what? We should let people investigate this place?
I'm not sure, unfortunately. That was before I got there.
Okay,
so
okay.
Couldn't really say on that decision.
Well, it's just interesting that some of these historical places, there'll be stories about it, but they won't necessarily let people, in to just investigate. I think it's interesting when, a historical landmark will let groups in to see what they see,
Of course. So we've had a really great experience with it. Most investigators, they either got into paranormal because they love history, or they've gotten into history because they're always in these fantastic buildings. We've met fantastic people coming through that really respect our space.
Okay. And it is available for, if you go to the website, I believe there's flashlight tours, and it's all the information to be able to investigate the places is up there now, right?
Yes, you can investigate throughout the year, either a 4-hour, 8-hour, or 12-hour investigation.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. How about this? Of the groups that came through, actually a couple questions with this. Who do you think got the best evidence? And I'm trying to think of how to word this. Who do you what was the scariest moment for a group, maybe, or the most, because you always see in the ghost shows, there's all, whether it's scary or not, something will happen and everybody runs out of the building or runs out of the room, because it's so surprising. What do you think that moment was for somebody?
Most groups don't tend to run out, at least in my experience with the Squirrel Cage. I think probably some of the scariest ones, they'll get out, things like that, or their cameras will start turning off. So they just can't do anything anymore.
Okay.
And they just get the feeling they're not wanted there. But we just don't have anything super scary like some of the other locations you mentioned earlier. And I do think that's because the jailer is still hanging around, keeping things a little bit calmer.
That's kind of an interesting take on it, because you wonder because you said, how did you come up with that there's 6, 7, or 8 entities or something happening there? Was that
when
from
they
the groups?
Investigate, they've gotten quite a few different names over the years.
Okay.
And so we've kind of been able to pin it down, not necessarily exactly who it is, but likely another staff member, we think a matron, not connected to Foster, and then probably a couple of inmates, and then we think 2 children.
That's interesting.
Keep us busy.
Yeah, it is. It especially when you start thinking about, if you think about a haunting in the terms of a jail or prison, if you do have the one, guy that's, or one entity, I should say, that's kind of keeping everybody in line, you kind of wonder what the place would be like if he wasn't there,
Oh, definitely. I think it would be far crazier.
In that case, has there ever been a moment where it kind of started getting out of hand and then it went down real quick?
Not in my experience, but
Okay.
they tend to be, I don't want to say calmer around me, but I've been there long enough that
They know you.
they know me. So they're not trying to do things like that around me.
If a new person comes in, like a new worker or something comes in, do they get the business?
We usually let them know what's going on, or they're already interested in it. Most people in the area know that the Squirrel Cage has something weird going on.
That's the interesting part of the job application series, is when you have to tell them about the ghosts.
Yeah, to make sure everybody's comfortable with that.
Yeah, really, right. Well, I just think that's interesting. I never really thought about a haunting in terms of a prison where you may have a guard. That's a crazy thought,
Sure. I appreciate it, that's for sure.
I mean, you really, if you think about it in terms of that, I mean, if there are inmates there, that what's the saying about the inmates have taken over the asylum or whatever?
Oh, exactly.
Boy, that could get really, and I use the word interesting in a very weird way, but that could get interesting real quick.
I would think so. I think it keeps things from being too exciting. I know when we brought more investigators back after we had the lockdown for the pandemic, people were getting touched more often, specifically women, either on like their lower back or their legs.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of crazier stuff, because that is definitely not what people are asking to have happen.
Can you prove you're here? Not like that.
Exactly. Be a little bit more polite.
Yes, exactly. Well, I don't know why, but I keep saying it, but I've never really thought about it in the terms of what if there was a guard.
Or you hope that they're not stuck there.
Yeah, really. Or, God, you hope he doesn't think he's still on duty, Who would the kids be?
We think possibly some of the jailers' kids, but unfortunately we don't know.
Okay. Are there a ton of records for this still remaining, and it's just a matter of piecing through it, or?
There's a mixture. Since we started in 1885, we won't have fingerprint cards going that far back. It's a relatively new science.
Okay.
So bear with me on that. So we have them from about the 1920s forward.
Okay.
And then some of our older booking records are just a name and a number, which doesn't give us a huge amount of information. It's not until about 1932 that we get more information on those booking records. So we've been piecing it together, and we keep learning. We're very lucky. Many of the records have been coming back over the last few years as well, because they had to move with the sheriff's department. They were still relevant to their work when the jail closed down.
Okay. Kat Slaughter, the museum director for the Squirrel Cage Jail in Council Bluffs. We'll have all the information at the bottom of the page. Has there been any surprises when you go through the record about the place? Because when you say that, there was one guy that was in, or a kid that was in there for shooting chickens, and another guy for, I forget what it was, the 5 days. Was there any surprises like, oh, somebody was in there for murder, or somebody was in there for this or that? Has there been anything like that?
We've had people in there for just about everything as a county jail, and it was open for 84 years, so it did stay quite busy. Maybe not surprising, but the one that sticks out to me is we had quite a few intoxication cases, which, sure, the county jail, right?
Yeah.
But our cells rotate. So I think that would have been very difficult for everybody involved to actually have the floor moving while they dry out.
Yeah, that would... I feel like the world's spinning. It is. I guess, you know what? I imagine since it's a county jail, people probably weren't in there for long term, right?
Yeah, most of the time it's a couple of nights, maybe a week. And a lot of times they're waiting for processing, things like that.
Okay, so yeah, you could really have an astronomical number for the amount of people that may have gone through the place.
Yeah, it was quite busy, that's for sure. We had overcrowding at times. We could be up to over 100 inmates.
Kat Slaughter, the museum director for the Squirrel Cage Jail. What else do you guys have going on here in the next, couple? Is it just keep piecing together the history of it, having groups come in? What's a day in the life of Kat Slaughter like?
It changes every day. We usually do tours on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and those are open for self-guided tours. And then as spooky season comes up, we're going to be doing flashlight tours at the end of October on the 27th, 28th, and 29th. So those are guided tours.
Okay.
And the building will be decorated. We'll have a few people dressed up as scares throughout. So it's kind of a history tour with a twist.
I bet
So a lot of fun.
I bet the guard would really enjoy that.
Oh, for sure. Sometimes we get some interactions.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Makes it more exciting.
This is the Haunting of KGGO, sponsored by Phantom Fall Fest, happening at Adventureland all this month. More details at adventurelandresort.com. Kat, as we do get ready to wrap this up, people can investigate this all throughout the year, correct?
Yes, they can.
And do you guys have people in like every weekend? Is it fairly packed? I know it's been on a few of the shows, right?
It has. It's been getting nice and busy now that we're hitting September and October, but we usually have multiple investigations a month, but we can usually get people in pretty quickly.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have the information
Our
at the bottom.
schedule's flexible.
Okay, cool. Real quick, I always think this is kind of interesting when it comes to places. I have a love-hate relationship with some of the ghost shows out there just because of how they depict certain things. Who's done of the ghost shows that have kind of come through since you've been there? Who's done the best job depicting the jail and the hauntings in the place?
Well, we've only had, I guess, two. One was just a quick, 4-minute segment to show off the jail and being haunted, and then we had Ghost Adventures. So
Zach
they were
and the
fantastic.
boys?
They showed off the building great. Yeah, they came about 3 years ago.
Did he scream at the ghosts and all that to try and get them to come out?
I don't believe he needed to.
Really? That's interesting, because there was something I saw one time, and it goes, Ghost Adventures is a hour-long show about guys telling ghosts to step up, and then when they do, they run away.
I haven't heard that. No, we had a great experience with them. They were incredibly respectful of our building and our staff.
That's awesome. Good deal. All right, Kat. Well, hey, I appreciate the time so much. It sounds like you got it's not often you come across the pleasant haunting, especially when the word jail's involved, you know?
We're very grateful for it.
I bet so. Kat Slaughter, the museum director of the Squirrel Cage Jail, part of the Haunting of KGGO. I appreciate the time, Kat.
So much for having me.
This has been another edition of the Haunting of KGGO. It's sponsored by the Phantom Fall Fest, happening in Adventureland all this month. Get more details at adventurelandresort.com. And for all the episodes of the Haunting of KGGO, head to kggo.com/haunting. We'll see you next week.